Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a few days. I did a story time I think a couple days ago, and now I'm finally back doing that video. I did talk about how I was going to do a meta report for Yeti, and yeah, I haven't done that. I might not do that. I did a story time. I mean, it's close enough. The meta is pretty much what we expect. There's nothing too much spicy out of it. But what I am going to talk about, though, is that we just got a brand new BNR and Aproxia's Vault announcement coming out on here September 2nd. We're about a few weeks away from Singapore, and then about a little over a month away from AMB. So this is a pretty decent shakeup in what we're expecting to see and what everything was expecting to happen. So we're going to go ahead and break down the BNR, give a little bit of my thoughts about it, and go ahead and discuss it a little bit further. So as I said, this is the September 2nd ban restriction, and we're going to start off with sort of a decent card. We have a new Proxia's Vault. So they wanted to buff up Arisana. Arisana has been weak for the past two sets, and sort of trying to not really getting a recollection, not going into recollection right now. They created a new Proxia's Vault card to maybe try and help bolster her. The way this works, it's a zero cost. If you're Arisana, you can go ahead and activate this card from your material deck, but comes in rested. And whenever you sacrifice a herb, you may put an age counter on Polaris. And then if you go ahead and banish Polaris, it deals X damage to all allies and generate up to X Cosmic Bolt cards. So generate is the ones like Creeping Torment, where you generate them, and they go in your deck. You have to have the physical card. It cannot be a proxy. It has to be in the same as X sleeves as well. If you fail to have any of these cards in your like extra area, like with your sideboard or anything like that, your extra cards, you can fail to generate the cards and put them in your deck. But you can generate X Cosmic Bolts and shuffle them into your deck at X amount of age counters on this card. So if age counters is 4, you can generate 4 Cosmic Bolts, put it into your deck. You now have 4 more Cosmic Bolts to try and close out the game. I'm iffy on this card. All right, I think the card could be good. I also think the card could be a little rough. I mean, this card dies to reduce the Ash. The card has some really bad interaction with Zephyr. There's a lot of cards in this game, Spurn the Ash. A lot of cards that deal with items, especially 0-drop memory items. And there's a lot of ways to deal with this card. It sort of just shuts down Ari. If you want to go ahead and get Polaris, try and cheat it out early versus a fire deck, they reduce the Ash, feels bad. You're starting to get H counters, you Zephyr, okay, now have to crack it for maybe 3 or 4. And it's not horrible, but also like you don't get the value you're probably trying to get out of it, where you want to keep on top decking Cosmic Bolts and just close out the game that way. So the card can be good, it can be bad. I'm in the okay slot. Like I'm in like the 6 out of 10 range on this card. I think it does help Arisana, but I don't think it's going to bump up into tier 1 range. She might be tier 2, tier 2.5 still-ish. It really depends on the build. She has a lot of different brews happening for it, because also you're starting to generate still these herb cards, and your deck building is already sort of tight. Like if you're wind, you can maybe argue, because when you have glimpse cards, you can do don't think it's called crop rotation. It might be called crop rotation, where you glimpse 2 and then you can gather 2 for 2-drop slow speed. You can try and run the class bonus floating memory herb cards that you gather, or get the gather cards you want. You can run the Servant, which does go ahead and have a 1/2 class bonus floating memory on enter gather. You can run Fertile Grounds, which you copy your herbs. Fire doesn't have too many ways to gather without hurting yourself, which could be a little argumentable, but you can run Kindling Fire, which is like a fireball for herbs. You can go, there's a couple different cards. There's a couple cards in water as well. There's a lot of different ways you can go into it, but like Arisana brewing herbs sort of goes against the game plan, where you really want to glimpse and gather a lot, glimpse a lot to get and do spell damage. So I'm not sold. I'm so iffy on this card. I don't know how I feel about it. The card's like okay. I don't think it's busted. Some people can tell me otherwise. Some people have told me otherwise. I haven't seen any brews or anything like that, so just take that with a grain of salt. But I'm not really sold on this card. I don't know how I feel about it, but the time will tell. We do have, like I said, Singapore coming up, and we do have, I think, another regional. We have NorCal regionals, I think, and SoCal regionals, or at least just NorCal regionals that is up and coming. And then going into our category 3, it officially happened. Where Karahazi Outlook has been banned. Karahazi Outlook is a card that's sort of been dominating the meta. It's sort of down second fiddle. Storm Simon's been really good. Sylvie's been really good. And if you go to Tristan decks, like Karahazi Outlook really helped enable the combo piece, because I've talked about it in my video where I literally had turns where I go ahead and Karahazi Outlook, okay, activate, okay, Dungeon Guide can't respond, Shadow Strike can't respond, game. And it really turned down the game plan where people couldn't interact with your board state if you played Karahazi Outlook. It made it really hard. People had to either counter this card or interact beforehand, or go ahead and then pretty much everything before that glimpse 1 trigger. And if your opponent interacts with it, then you just sort of go, okay, I'm just going to pass my turn then and set up for next turn. And a lot of good players were able to do that, where Karahazi Outlook could stay on the field in some other ways and then go ahead and set up the combo for the following turns. So Cards Outlook is banned. They're going to maybe try and readjust this in the future or relook at cards in sort of the same interaction where you made it so your opponents can interact with your board state a little bit different in the future, maybe a little different design space, which I do applaud them for. I think a lot of games have sort of this mechanic. I know at least my main game used to be Magic, and Magic used to have ways where you prevent ways for your opponent from interacting. You have cards like Silence. There's a couple of cards where you prevent your opponent from playing cards during the turn, and it's sort of, this isn't an unheard of mechanic. This isn't unheard of. This hasn't been broken in other games. It could just be these cards a little too early, a little hard to interact with the current state of Grand Archive at the moment, but it makes this card a little bit stronger than most. So I do think we're going to see Cards Outlook come back. I don't know if it's going to be unbanned to come back, or it's just going to be completely reworked, and some of the Cards Outlook will come back into the game. But for now, I think this was an okay ban overall. Category 2, we still have Erupting Rhapsody, but we added Chalice of Blood. Chalice of Blood, they think a card is going to be limiting the design space of the game going forward. So they're very concerned about the rate of the card pool is increasing and allowing opponents to draw 2 cards and pretty much hindering what people do. I mean, Chalice of Blood is already a card that made people have to think about what damage they're doing. They pretty much want to see, okay, can I swing in for 19? And I don't put a Chalice of Blood damage, good. Or if you swing in, they go Chalice of Blood and you pull it out, they go, oh, I forgot Chalice of Blood's thing, and you get to draw 2 cards and then maybe try and combo off and filter off the top of your deck. So Chalice of Blood does sort of limit the future design space of Grand Archive. And I think this card's an okay card to keep their eye on. This card might be banned, it might not be. It's sort of in the same area, I think, as Erupting Rhapsody. Where Erupting Rhapsody is in that realm space where the card is good, but I think it's going to be one of those cards where it's limiting design space, where this might end up being banned just because of that pure design space expectation, which is what both these cards right now in Category 2 or 4. They're not overtuned, not overpowered. They argue they can be, they could be argued they're pretty strong, but I think it's mostly because of the fact they are going to limit the future design spaces of the game, and that's going to really end up hurting everything in the future. So I don't completely disagree with Chalice of Blood being in the Category 2, and the fact they could go to Category 3, especially Erupting go to Category 3, maybe become A and B, because the next BNR is around the time of A and B release, could end up being a thing that happens. Into our Category 1s. We still have Dream Fairy up there. We have Guy's Blessing. So Guy's Blessing is now Category 1. Again, this is back to design space. This card lets you go ahead. It is a card that is coming more and more into the metagame, and it's one of the main points of balancing control over influence size. It contributes to the board. It gets to banish 4 cards from your graveyard and go into your banish, which also helps enable Storm Slime. And they've been pretty careful about these types of designs into the future, but right now it is sort of maybe playing it back into the meta. And what could happen come A and B is that they're going to go ahead and rework this going forward, or ban it because, once again, design space. Same thing with Scepter and Stone Scale ban in the Category 1 space. And then that's all they have for the BMR, and except they will come October 11th. But that being said, let's go ahead and talk about this BNR a little bit. Let's talk about the current state of the meta. We're going to talk about where everything is right now, where people expect it to become in this. We have this in Singapore on the corner. I'm going to probably rework my tier list video. I know I did that way back in the early start of MRC. I'm probably going to rebring it back before the final ascent and see where we sort of lined up where the current meta is versus where I predicted it early on in the season. So, but right now, where the current meta stands, I think we have cards like Cards Outlook, which is a good ban. Cards Outlook was expected to be banned, and I think that is okay for the most part. I think we're going to... I'm going to bring this back to just me to talk about this. And I think we're in the point where it's really interesting to see where we're at ban-wise. People have been very argumentative, arguing, sure, something of the sort, of Storm Slime and the Slime deck as a whole. Slime has been a deck that's been pretty running rampant, especially since Chicago, a little bit before Chicago. People are seeing the rise of it, and people are really wanting Storm Slime to get Category 1. People feel like there's not a lot of good answers to the card, and it pretty much hinders a decent amount of gameplay that people are trying to use in order to play the game of Grand Archive. They could argue it's almost as bad as Crazy Outlook in the way it's designed. The fact that if you try and kill it, or interact with a Stifling Trap, it goes and gets to draw 2 cards, it gets to recoup that. Killing it also can help enable your Guy's Blessing that we just talked about. Your Guy's Blessing can now be banished. You banish 4 slimes, and now Storm Slime does more. It starts getting to the point where it's dealing Arcane Blast with a scalability factor, and the fact you can go ahead and swing with this unit. And I can't say I disagree. The Storm Slime Category 1. Weebs obviously have something in mind. They don't feel it is a problematic card currently. They don't feel like it's hitting the issue of the game, so they're not going to put a Category 1. There's arguments both ways for this card to be Category 1. There's ways to deal with it. You have Stifling Trap, not the best way to deal with it. You have your barrier cards, Water Barrier, Arcane Barrier, Wind Barrier. I don't think Fire has one. Provoke Obstinance, Innovate Agility. You have Innovate, not Innovate. There's another card I'm thinking of, and you have Twilight Slime. There are ways to deal with your opponent's Storm Slime. It's not the best. You pretty much have to brew your entire card to include it in, which isn't unheard of in games. A lot of games have those cards where there's one problematic card in the format and you have a certain sideboard. If you face that matchup, you sideboard it in for that specific matchup, and that's what it's meant for. It's what your sideboard is meant to be used in retrospective TCGs. So this isn't unheard of. This isn't something new. But yeah, it would have been nice to see it Category 1, just even to appease people. I mean, you can always remove cards from Category 1, but I can see why you don't at the same time. I think it's going to be sort of a chaoticness come Ascent Singapore. But I'm going to talk about more Ascent Singapore in my tier breakdown video leading up to Ascent Singapore, and what probably I'm going to expect to be what the current tier list is and what I'm going to expect to see brought in Singapore. But TLDR of that future video coming up that I haven't recorded yet, I'm now giving myself video ideas as I'm recording, is that we're probably going to see Slimes, we're probably going to see Wind Allies a lot. Merlin's always been a factor. Merlin's always been around. You're going to see probably a little bit of Erupting, and you're going to see probably heavy Nico. This is because, in fact, we went over Singapore. We went over, actually, a Singapore regional video. And SEA is very heavily on the Nico game plan. Yeah, Pro Ann's team, Pro Ann, I don't know the exact team name. I would give you guys a shout out, but I don't know the exact team name. Pro Ann's team, which is pretty deep. They have like 4+ Nico players with a couple other non-Nico players on their team, and they're pretty heavy into Nico, and they keep on topping events with it. They have a lot of results with that deck, and that deck's going to keep on coming up more and more in the future. So I think Nico's going to be pretty heavy represented at Singapore. But in terms of BNR, this BNR is all right. I don't think it's going to shake the meta too much. Tristan's going to pivot their deck. Tristan's going to go ahead and pivot off of Crazy Outlook, maybe back into the Slice and Dice mixed in with Sharpen Blade, the new assassin card that gives your daggers extra attack. I think it's Sharpen Blade. Might go more of an aggro game plan route. We've seen a couple of aggro Tristans, we've seen a couple of aggro Xanders before in the Wind package, so might see more of that game plan coming out versus less of the Shadow Strike game plan. And we've seen decks also went with Shadow Strike otherwise to deal to go ahead and Shadow Strike for lethal without Crazy Outlook. There's the ways where they can go ahead but it also slows down the game plan of Tristan, because the fact that they want to go ahead and Crazy Outlook and reclaim or Zephyr to get extra preparation counters allows you to get those early preparation counters onto your deck, and it does buff it a little bit more as a whole, which is sort of where Tristan wants to be in that early game plan. But I don't have much else to talk about. Like I said, I'm going to make another breakdown video, tier list breakdown video come for Singapore, and they're going to go over the tier list video beforehand. We're going to go over the tier list that we had built beforehand and see where it stacks up and where I think everything's going to be nowadays. And we'll go over that, so make sure to keep an eye out for that video. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. Again, I'm not starting up doing meta breakdown. It says near the end of the meta. I'll probably do one after Singapore, even though it's not going to be as relevant, but you can see what sort of comes out of there. But with that being said, everyone, I hope everyone has a good one. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will catch you all later on the next one. Peace.